Phil, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
What got you into theater?
Well, it started a long time ago. My mother was into theater, so I remember as a child getting to see some of the productions that she did. And then I met my wife through the theater.
You did?
Yeah, she was really big into it in high school, to such an extent that she did a lot of college productions while in high school.
Right.
And I was out in Spain one summer, and when I came back, my best friend was the stage manager for one of the shows, and he invited me to a cast party. And that's where I met my wife. So,
Yes.
And I was really into experimental theater when I first started in college. You know, we had an adaptation of Mask of the Red Death where I had the body back then that you could wear tights, black tights, and some kind of a special mask depending on what room you were in.
Right.
So I did a lot of crazy things.
So what was your first show ever? What was it?
First show ever? Oh gosh. I don't think I could tell you. It kind of all blurs. I'm a child of the 70s, so.
Well, we talked to some other folks of the child of the 70s, and they went to living in the communes, the whole experimental thing, becoming reborn again. Yeah, it's like all of the 70s. It's a turbulent time, yes.
Crazy times. I think we all are happy we survived it.
What's your favorite show you've ever done?
Favorite show I've ever done? Actually, I think Annie that we did was really well done here at Stage Right. I liked it because I was pushing myself at this time in my life, where I was Franklin D. Roosevelt, and I had to sing a couple solos, and your voice is just not, your vocal cords are not what they used to be, so I was a little nervous, and was able to push it, and I was really.
It was a great time. It took us a while to get there, like I said, but it was a great time. Cast finally did, come together in jail.
There was a lot of.
There was a lot of drama. That's the way, drama behind the scenes. Yeah. We could have a reality show. It might have been funny or not so funny.
You're right. That would be a great reality show.
One time we were approached a couple of years back to do a reality show on theaters.
No kidding.
Yeah, community theater.
Wow.
And they wanted behind the scenes access. I went, nah.
Don't reveal too much.
No, that's too much. I don't think we want to. So that was your first show at the Crighton? Or no? Did you do CYT stuff?
I did a lot of CYT stuff, but not here.
But not here. Okay.
Yeah, we had other venues when it. I first got involved when it first started.
Right.
Once I came here, I just fell in love with the people, the building, because it's not pretentious. It's not. It's just a lot of people who love theater and that come from very diverse backgrounds.
Oh, yes, they do.
I think you and I are probably not typical.
No. We're going to talk about that later too.
But I just and that's a big part of it is just liking the people that you're with, and I felt like it's time in life that I start to do more artistic things again.
Right.
It's like you go into this bell curve during your late 20s and full 30s. You're just thinking of work and growth and money and all that stuff. But then you get to a point where
more philosophical and more. Let's do some different things.
I want to do what I really love to do.
Right.
I also play music.
Right.
But I'm not quite good enough to do anything in public there yet. But,
what do you play?
I play classical, acoustic, electric, and bass guitars.
Wow.
And I'm natural at drums, although I haven't had any formal training in drums. But it's probably the bass guitar. I've got the beat in me.
Right. What kind of music do you like to play?
Well, I had a band in 1981, and we were actually playing already Talking Heads, and our music was very similar to The Cure, actually, before The Cure really came to the States, which was in '82. So it was kind of rock bass, but some neo-punk into it as well. We were really big into syncopations and lyrics, of course, is important. So, and we were though in the South, and back, if we were in New York, I think it would have been a lot more accepted, I think.
Right.
But, being in the Deep South, people are like, what the heck is that kind of music? Yeah. Bring out some country. Yeah?
That's right.
So, it's okay. Yeah. I think music, just like any art, you're really doing it for yourself more than the audience. So.
Right. Well, let's talk about real life. What do you do in real life?
Oh,
or some of the things. Let's start back. When did you major in college?
Well, I had an economics major and a minor in computer science.
Okay.
And my first job was actually in IT, and I did coding. It was back in the mainframe days.
Yes.
So
yes.
System 38s and 36s, and essentially I wrote RPG code, which was still using a ruler and literally character by character,
oh my goodness,
line by line. And I was hired by a French multinational company called Europe Assistance Worldwide Services, which was a medical emergency network that repatriated Americans to the U.S. when they got injured in Africa or wherever. And they wanted to, they had 80 offices around the world. They wanted to connect it all and have an automated system of recording the doctor's transcripts and things like that. So, this is pre Windows. So, it was a green terminals and so I wrote, I think 400,000 lines of codes for one program. And you can imagine, if you had one mistake, I mean, on one line, it could blow the whole thing.
Right.
So coding was actually the easy part. Debugging was. And I remember spending literally 16-hour days for months to make deadlines and things like that. So it was kind of crazy. My wife and I, thank goodness she was going to grad school at the time, so we would just hardly saw each other.
Work sometimes does that,
but very quickly I moved from being just a grunt programmer to being the IT director.
Yes.
In 4 years. So it was
wow.
I was promoted. I counted back an average of every 4 months. I received a promotion. Wow. So, but I think it was because people were just coming and going, and and so and then from there I went into communications, and I was actually in technical support for AT&T for the Mid-Atlantic area, and then eventually the whole East Coast. So I managed the technical groups, and I was approached by Bell Labs, and well, I'm glad I didn't, because it kind of petered away in the long run. But I moved into sales because a lot of the big accounts that my team was supporting, I would be ending up doing all the work, and I felt like they would go play golf and would have nice lunches, and they would make 3 times my salary. And so I kind of went, there's got to be something here. And of course, I was completely wrong. I thought it was an easy thing.
Right.
It's actually very difficult.
Yes.
And I was one of the lucky few technical people that were able to
make that transition.
To make that transition. And then I worked my way to becoming branch manager of AT&T before I then moved on to NCI. And then I started my own company in 1994, which was a telecom company, and was able to grow into something relatively large for the. I kind of rode the internet wave of the 90s.
Yes.
And so I've been an entrepreneur really since '94, and that was probably the last time that I had a formal, structured, corporate environment that I had to report to. And the last time was in the cubicle, world. And I view really entrepreneurs as the true, backbone of this country. I mean, because it's incredibly hard. You have all the issues, and you're trying to make something out of nothing. You're trying to make payroll. You're trying to a lot of people to have a living, and to me, it's kind of like the Wild West.
Well, it's interesting because as an entrepreneur, you have to wear so many hats.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily mean you have to be good at all of them, but you at least have to get them executed. And a lot of times you do need some competence in each area, right? Some minimum competence.
Absolutely.
Right. What part of being an entrepreneur do you like the best?
Well, being an entrepreneur is simply you've got to get things done, because there's no other option.
No.
And And those are skills that really apply to everything. I mean, it's the same with us here
at the theater. That's
right.
Right.
That's right. You know, it's not that. I mean, problems we're going to encounter problems. Life is just a series of problems.
Right.
But it's what you do with them. You
yes.
You gotta, you just have to deal with it, whether you have the competency or not.
Or not. Figure out a way to make it work. You either get better at it or find someone who is better.
Exactly. Right. And delegating. I was one of those people initially that had a big time delegating, and when I started my company, I made every mistake in the world, which was to surround myself with yes people, and it was my way or the highway.
Right.
And that actually ended up making me lose everything that I initially built up, because I ended up getting sick, and I ended up not being able to work for about 6 months, and having surrounded myself with a bunch of yes people, they were not able to manage the company in my absence. And
that's interesting, because, like I said, that applies again to almost any organization, right? We tend to want to put yes people around us, like-minded people, right? It's just less of a hassle, less contentious. We're the issues. We're all on the same page, and yet the lifeblood of an organization is that the interaction.
Yes.
And you don't necessarily want everyone to think the same way.
No, I mean,
not to have same competence.
Exactly. You want to be able to have the final word, because it's usually your money, or you're managing the money of others. But you want definitely someone to question. And so you learn the hard way.
And on the other hand, if you have too much discord, too many people that aren't working toward that same goal, again, you're defeating the purpose of the organization. It's an amazing fine line. And being a technical person, we're both technical folks. The whole people aspect of theater and organizations in general is an amazing thing. I mean, you can take all the Dale Carnegie courses you want, but at the end of the day, when you get down to so the practical applications, there's how are we going to do this stuff?
I look at it very much kind of like football. You have a season.
Yes.
Our season is 2.5 months, and you've got your coach, and the coach has taken a bunch of ragtag, individuals who some may like each other or not. And,
that's right.
And make something beautiful out of it.
Right.
And so I truly am enthused by the dynamics of what occurs in the theater. And you obviously have to have, I think, the kind of work that allows you to give the time. I mean,
absolutely, yes.
That's that is the. I think we're very fortunate. In other words,
on the other hand, you think about it. Every hobby takes time and money. Sometimes more of one or the other, sometimes a lot of both. But they both take time. Sure. And I guess the nice thing about America is that there's a hobby for just about anyone. And they're going on all the time, anywhere, anytime, And so you're in the theater, great. You want to be on stage, that's great. You want to be behind stage, doing tech stuff, there's plenty. You want to help build sets, that's fine. There's so much, but that's just the theater aspect. Think about every other thing. You're into ultimate frisbee, there's problem. You're into competitive line dancing. I'm sure you can find that someplace.
Absolutely.
There's quilting. I didn't realize how competitive quilting can be. You know that there are these quilting cruises, and that is not a walk in the park. They're serious. We have these goals that we're going to be on this cruise. A quilting cruise? There's something for everyone.
Yeah.
How do you approach a character?
Well, I try to, understand the character within the story, his perspective. I think by understanding his perspective, you can then naturally have some of the similar reactions, so that it appears that you're actually acting well when in fact you're reacting well.
Right.
So getting into the character, maybe some historical research, potentially to see the times that the character's in. You also I think want to understand the human dynamic of whatever, the people around him. Mm-hmm. So if he has a wife, does he get along with the wife? Not why not? But I think understanding the why.
Yes.
In the environment, those are the things I kind of do before you start practice, and then once you're in practice, then there's a dynamic of the actual. There's a director and how they want it.
Right.
And there's a lot of you gotta close your mouth and just kind of, it's director's way.
That's right. Yeah,
but at least, you're prepared to do your part. And that's, I think, what I've learned in theater and it's very humbling for me as a leader,
Right.
is to, I may have my own mind. In fact, often I imagine the production before we, day one, of how it should look.
Exactly.
How,
yes.
And then of course, then reality sets in, and it's it's the way of the director. And a lot of times though, it's a new perspective. We go, oh, I didn't think of that. And, oh, that looks good. Mm-hmm. But as an actor, your place is not to look at the macro level. Right. Your place is really to think about what is your character is supposed to do. How does it portray itself? How does it project? Mm-hmm. And then there's a lot of mechanics and technical things about the character. You want to make sure that you're projecting not just the voice and the sound level, but that you're projecting that feeling, whatever feeling that character is supposed to project. If he's a pathetic character, then somehow you need to project that pathetic character.
But you had an interesting notion, and it's very true. And we talked about reacting, not just acting, but reacting, which means that this interface between your fellow actors. Mm-hmm. What happens when your fellow actor doesn't give you what you need to react, or
Well, then I think in a way coaching, but that's it's a very fine line, because you don't want to certainly appear like you're telling him or her what it is that you do, but I do a lot of coaching in my business, so you can coach without them ever knowing you're coaching.
That's right.
Coaching is not telling. Coaching is not directing. Coaching is not managing. Coaching is talking about things. And so if I had a real problem, a problem that actually I felt inhibited what I needed to do, then I would become very close to that person. Probably invite them to lunch and just start to have informal.
So you build rapport with the person.
Exactly. Yes. So that I can gently bring up things to get them to agree, or even to get them to repeat it. And then I go, that's a great idea.
It's a tactic. Yes, it's a definite tactic in business. Yes.
And then you help them to implement that great idea.
Right.
And then before you know it, it's going a little better.
That's right. And you've got what you needed, and hopefully they get what they needed, and everyone benefits.
Another obstacle that you find a way to overcome. It's just when you deal with individuals, you just have to realize that everybody, has the same feelings of themselves, or they have insecurities, or whatever it is. But I mean, they are a sentient being just like you are, that has every right to believe whatever they believe in, and so my way is not the right way necessarily, and that's where informal discussions and getting together with another person and having that interchange, I think is really critical.
When you go and see other shows at other places, what do you like to see, or what have you seen that you really enjoy?
Well, I'm a softie for musicals. I mean, literally, it always ends well. I mean, literally, I still get a tear in my eye sometimes.
I know. That's right. Yeah. Hey, we're guys, but this really touched me. Hey, we're okay.
I think I enjoy things that make people happy. So I really enjoy plays that the objective of the play is really to bring people who may be down on their luck or down with their work or whatever problems they have in their life, and they come into the theater. The theater is a magical place, that I mean, in an hour and a half, 2 hours, we can transform their mood and make them leave the theater maybe with a smile on their face, or I see some even dancing out or whatever.
Yes, absolutely. Which is very different. But you said early on you were into experimental theater. And I'm saying that experimental theater needs to be bad or down or anything like that. Yeah. And I do think there's a place for black box type productions.
Yeah.
It gives new artists, writers, directors, even actors a chance to kind of spread the wings, so they can be better, not just at that production, but any production that they do.
Right. And I think college is a great place to do that, because you got a lot of, chemicals inside of you, that you get that extra energy, drive, or whatever. I think if we had more cafes and pubs that are kind of like Seattle used to be in the 80s and 70s, where you could have little tiny productions of one act, 20-minute experimental plays. That's all you
low
really
risk,
need.
low cost kind
Exactly.
of thing.
Exactly. Where the patron just wants to sell some coffees and whatever lattes. I think there's a place for that, because then they're really dealing with I think themselves as a human being during those experimental productions. They're trying things out, maybe with their voice, maybe with their acting, maybe with whatever it is.
Yeah.
And I think it strengthens them as actors, and we're the beneficiaries. In a larger venue like ours, I think we would welcome people who've experimented with different things, and therefore have a deeper understanding of their capabilities. So.
What shows would you like to do that you haven't done yet?
Well, gosh, that's something I haven't.
I mean, obviously, there's usually you have an eye for a certain part that you might want, but
like I said, I enjoy the challenge of musicals, but drama as well. I read a lot of classics. I was at boarding school all my life, right? So I had to read pretty much all the classics. I would like to see actually a Shakespeare play. I mean, I don't know how popular, obviously, that would be from a marketing standpoint, but we may be amazed. I mean, there's also ways maybe we can modernize a Shakespeare play so that it's not and things that
or shorten it. So it's still relevant, because a lot of the themes are relevant to today, but it has to say portrayed, characterized in the proper manner. Cultivated. Yes.
And I believe there are some writers who've taken Shakespeare plays and modernized it into production. So, I think I would enjoy some of that as well, especially if it was a Shakespeare play with a positive ending.
Yes. The comedies are incredible. I always like watching Kenneth Branagh, because he always seems to be able to bring Shakespeare to life and make it relevate to now.
Absolutely. And he's one of my favorite actors.
He's an incredible actor too. And so that's why I like a lot of his renditions, versions of Shakespeare, either that he's directed, produced, or both. He's in it and he's directed.
I'd like to get more involved on the acting side, but it takes the time. So,
sure.
So I'm trying to. I know what I need to do, and it involves my wife as well. So in a couple, we have to make sure that one of us at least has a job that has medical.
That's true of us too. They say we're just individuals. We got to find a way. Medical is important. Especially you get older. Yep, medical is important. Got to have it.
Right. And my wife kind of wants to do the same thing that I do, so that's where the rub is.
Okay. Well, just get independently wealthy, and then you won't worry about it. That's what we're working on today. This is an independently wealthy program.
Exactly. Yeah. And also living much simpler. It's interesting. And the theater helped me to get to this point, believe it or not. But,
really?
Getting to the point where you really don't need all these things.
We're very vegetarian oriented as a society, aren't we?
Yeah. I mean,
you've got to have this thing, and they make you want this thing, right? For a perfect example of that is I want an iPad, and I can't think of how I would use it.
Exactly.
That is the stupidest thing in the world, but their marketing is really effective because I want one.
Well, it's so beautiful. It's sleek,
What am I going to do with it? I can't. This is useless.
Exactly.
It's an expensive movie, watching, or DVD player. I can't think, but I want one. So marketing is, someone has done a really good job at marketing this.
Oh, and even the packaging.
The colors.
When I buy any Apple product, I take 10 minutes just to unwrap it. That's part of the experience. But do I need any of those things? I don't.
No.
It's interesting how some of the things that we kind of knew in our hearts as young adults in our early 20s were actually right. That living, I think, a simple life. Still having the requirements like healthcare. You obviously want to be able to cook whatever you want in terms of food.
Right.
And and if it's cold, to have a coat. Those kinds of basic things. But much beyond that is really, it starts to become, do you really need it? Do you really need the new car every 3 years? Do you really need...
All those things that we used to think were important, we find they're not that important anymore. We can live much simpler lives. And I find that I tend to value experiences almost more than things. Not that I ever really was into things, but I find, like I said, a chance to learn something new, you know, a chance to make new friendships, you know.
Absolutely.
Much more valuable, although there's nothing tangible necessarily, much more valuable to me than all this
that's what
stuff that we own,
yeah.
right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And we realize, I mean, I don't know about you, but to me, time feels like it's getting faster and faster and faster.
Yes, it is.
I mean, every year it just seems like, what? We're done with the year already? Mm-hmm. So it makes me want to slow down and have more interactions, more relationships. I'd like to see in theater, and even in our theater, more things even outside. I mean, in other words, with the friendships that we create, you know, let's have a pool party or
right, absolutely,
discussions or things to get closer,
right?
Because you know, in the theater, it is still there's things we need to get done, and there's finite amounts of time,
right?
And so, most of the time we're not here socializing. We're here working pretty hard at it.
And except there's that shared experience, yes. But you're right. I think it's important to have those shared experiences outside of this needs to get done now. Yeah, or yesterday. You know, and so just relax, or even just have a philosophical conversation. I find that as I get older, not only does time seem to go faster, you tend to get more philosophical about life, about what you've done, your regrets, whatever.
Yeah.
And he said, well, what can I do about that now? Well, we're still young enough. We can do something about that now, and we have the wherewithal. We can do it. Let's do it now.
Yeah, and maybe show these young 20-year-olds that you're, whatever you're feeling, you may not be too far from the truth. Learn from our mistakes.
Oh my goodness! I said we did a lot of stuff when we got out of college, community college, up in the Dallas area, and there is definitely this, the kind of high school teenage angst that kind of goes into the early 20s, and you're in your early 30s. I just can't get this.
It's true. It's true.
There's a line. We want to sympathize, but the other hand, it's like, I have other issues.
Well, that is whole kid issue. Then you have kids.
Oh my goodness! And they grow up so fast. And we were just talking with Tom about, he's only got a couple more years when his kids are out here. Same thing with Michael. Yeah.
Same thing with
Morgan. Yeah. More years, and they're out here. We'll see them every now and then. But
I'll be crying in 2 years. But I have 3, so I can. They're 6 years apart, so I can still have that feeling.
Well, you do a lot of stuff at your church as well too, but theater related too. Or is it?
I do some theater. In fact, I'm doing something this weekend for the kindergarten, first grade, second grade, third grade group at Woods Edge.
Okay.
And I for 9 years I was very involved at Fellowship of the Woodlands, which is now called the Woodlands Church. But
okay.
And so I try to keep a Christian perspective on things. I mean, the great things that Christ taught is that we love people, and love your God, and realize that you're not so big and so full of yourself that you don't realize that there's much greater than you. So there's some lessons to be taught that I think are very critical in childhood, I think. And so I can see the marked differences of my children having been brought up in a Christian environment versus me and my family.
Right.
And my many people in my family are atheists or quasi, believing in something that's completely nonsensical. So, and that permeated from their parents, and for me, it was kind of a change that I'm glad to make in the tree of my ancestors.
Well, do you also write too? Do you enjoy writing?
I'm a technical writer as well. I mean, I do a lot of consulting in behavioral consulting, actually, human capital, that kind of stuff. But I also and I also wrote a technical book that was published, 10,000 copies, and used in grad school. Co-writer in that one, but yeah, I love to write. I mean, I love all the arts. I was a professional photographer in college, and that's actually what paid my college. I mean, The music I made in music, I mean, the money I made in music was used more for fun, but the money I made in photography was used for my tuition and my books. And,
really?
Oh yeah. And
did you give that up? Did you give up the photography? Or?
Well, no. My very first job out of college was a professional photographer in New Orleans. And,
yes.
Yeah, I would wake up around noon, and I would do shoots in the afternoon and in the evening.
Right.
And of course, because I was in New Orleans, I'd go out till 4 or 5 in the morning, and then I'd sleep till noon. And
the town that never sleeps. Yes. I lived there. I was there one summer, and I don't think the place ever slept.
It doesn't. I mean, there's always things going on, and I got to meet a lot of the old musicians before they died that were really from the 30s,
yes.
and that had a major influence in jazz. I was able to meet and be friends with. Mm-hmm. And and I drove around a '63 MGB, and and you're young, and you're thinking the world is your oyster. So, the only problem is, I for every $10 I spent, I only made $5. So,
oh dear.
So that only lasted a while, and then just the sheer amount of debt made me wake up and go, I have economics and computer science degree. I better do something with it to pay off this debt. Right. And so I literally just packed up my car, drove up to Washington, D.C., got a job in 5 days at Europe Assistance Worldwide Services, and the rest is history. But yeah, photography, I was, I did it the old-fashioned way. I mean, I had a dark room.
Oh, so you did your own black and white?
I did all my own.
Yes.
I developed, because I was the head photographer for the university, for this newspaper, and a contributor to the yearbook. So I had about 12 staff photographers.
Wow.
And so I was developing, with the trays and the chemicals, about 300 pictures a week, which today, with automation, it's like, 5 minutes.
Right.
Back then, doing it manually, where there was as much creativity in the darkroom as there were taking the picture.
That's right.
Because you're cropping and you're in
the darkroom. Yeah.
And there was no Photoshop, so if you wanted to remove this or lighten that, you would take a little popsicle stick, and you would put a piece of paper in the right shape, and you would shake it underneath the light as it's going on the paper. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that I did.
Yeah, right.
And then, of course, you're supposed to use thongs as you put the paper into the 3 solutions.
Yes.
I never did. For the entire time, I used my fingers.
Okay.
And that may explain some of the oddness of...
What was this twitch you got?
that I may display sometimes. So,
well, let's talk about it, because, I don't have an eye for photography whatsoever. I love taking pictures, but I don't have an eye. And while a lot of you said the steps of developing a picture, most of them are replaced now by digital techniques and stuff like that still leaves the human element. Right. You still have to have the eye for the picture, capturing the right moment.
Absolutely.
What is it about photography that, like some that they're good versus not good? How do you develop the eye?
Yeah, that's a very good question, actually. You have to give yourself some time to acclimate yourself to the environment before jumping right into grabbing the camera. In other words, a lot of people, they arrive, like I've had the opportunity to live overseas, and then we would go, like in an Arabic country, we would go into these little tiny streets that were very much the way people live for the past 2,000 years.
Right.
And they just right away get to the camera, and they never take their eye off the view of the camera.
Right.
So they're never really getting the feeling of the environment. So they don't even know what they're taking a picture at. It's like throwing darts, blindfolded. So take the time before you jump to the camera to look around, to get the feeling. Oh, look at the poverty. Look at these little children who are actually bulimic because of lack of food.
Right.
And now I have an idea of what I want to portray in the pictures that I take. Then I take the camera. And then there's a lot of, which today may be all automatic, because I haven't bought a new camera in a while. All my cameras are completely manual. So you set, the apertures and everything based on the depth of field that you want, the lighting that you have, and you begin to compose. And a lot of things that would be logical are not logical when it comes to taking pictures. So you don't want, to center your person, and you want to try to include something that adds to the story. So every picture is a story.
Yes.
And so if I take why would I take a little child, either the whole body or just the torso versus the surrounding? Well, it depends on the story that I want to portray. So, in one instance, one of the best pictures that I ever took was, she was in a doorway, and you could tell from the surroundings what her life was like.
Wow.
So
it was a story, whole story in the picture.
So then, so she ended up being on the lower right-hand corner of the picture, and the majority of the picture was her surrounding. But that's what affected people. So just like art, like watching a painting, you want people to see a picture and to feel moved, as opposed to, I feel like technology has actually damaged that medium, because now people just take everything for granted, and they're just looking at, faces or whatever, as opposed to, wait a minute.
It's not all about faces.
You're not looking at the face to see if she's pretty or not, whatever. You want to see, what is the point of that picture? Is there a point to it?
Right. Well, that's interesting that you bring that up, because that's very much applicable to acting, right? It's not just about lines. It's not just about technique. Technique is very much like the digital software that we have now or the technology we have to do, to take the pictures. It's about the story, because again, we love stories, right? Theater is really about stories, and it's like each moment is not. I haven't thought, I think from a director's point of view is a picture, but it's not just a picture from visually, but almost at this visceral level, gut level, the story level, and that's interesting. You said about photography, but it's also true about acting too. It applies to acting as well, right?
You're right.
Where do I fit into this story? What is the story?
Exactly.
Yeah, or is there a particular point to this story that I want to emphasize versus a different point to this particular story?
Absolutely.
That's fascinating. I have to remember next time I'm taking pictures, I'll remember the story behind the picture, as opposed to just as a picture per se.
Right, and soak in what. Right. Even if it's a carnival or if it's a parade, before you jump. It's so funny to me. I see people rushing to the parade, grabbing the camera, and like for the next hour, they're behind their camera. They have no. To me, I really look at it as, you're in front of a dartboard. You just become blindfolded. You're handed a bunch of darts, and you don't know what's going on around you. So, okay, start throwing. Where's the dartboard? And they may luck out, and they do. That's what most people. They take 200 pictures, and 5 of them are great.
But the good photographer, that percentage is much higher.
Right, exactly.
I remember.
They only take 20 pictures, and 5 of them are great.
That's right. And when I talk to good photographers, it's like, what's the secret of film? They would tell me burn film, and that's understandable. But and I do think that you can get this percent. If you have a low percentage, hopefully you will get this 1 in 100. That's the quality picture you've gotten. The story. But now you have something you can to focus on. Get back to the story, understand the milieu that you're in. Again, whether it's acting, photography, life, right? Even life is that right to write. We can tend to tend to just want to jump into life. Oh, okay, we're here. Okay, let's go do something, right? Can we just soak this in and let's understand. That's why I'm so glad Michael's getting to do this experience in China, because it's not just about learning the language. Although he will certainly do that, but it'll be kind of soaking up the culture.
Absolutely.
I don't, it doesn't mean he won't change his Western style of thinking, but at least he can appreciate a different point of view.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting with the McDonald medium. Let me explain what that means. Is, kids today, our kids, are used to such fast pace of everything. Instant gratification, instant.
Right.
So I'm seeing this in my own children, that they will not take the time to even look at the hard work, like even a video game, the hard work that it took to create a feeling. For even a game. No, it's right away to the, if the point is to kill as many people as you can.
That's good. Let's do it.
And let's just jump in. You now see that. So when I'm at the Grand Canyon, I actually, notice that families will get out of the car, walk to the edge, talk for 5 minutes, take a few pictures, and then go back in the car and go. How do you get the feeling? How do you absorb that in that amount of time? And first of all, they didn't even stop talking, so they didn't even, because the quiet, the Grand Canyon is part of the experience. Just sitting there and meditating for a while. I would just tell my kids, okay, go play, make sure I don't hear you, and let me soak it in if they're not going to want to do it.
That's probably one of the hardest lessons, even for me, I've learned because I've grown up with the digital generation, but I realized the fallacy of the McDonald's generation. Nothing against McDonald's.
Yeah.
Yes, we've got quality burgers, and they're certainly changing, over time.
Yeah.
But this is the mentality of I want it instantly.
Mm-hmm.
If I don't get my fast food as soon as I get to the window, what's the problem? Right? Yeah. Why are they so slow? I think that's one of the hardest lessons to teach others is stillness. Mm-hmm. Is to use stillness as an advantage, not a disadvantage. It's seen, I think, that absence of doing something. I think my mother really tried to instill that in me too, and I think I still have a hard time with that. Is that just stop? Yeah. Stop for a moment. Be still.
Yes.
And soak up that moment and use it. Not the absence of them, because it's not just the absence of movement isn't the absence of everything. There's actually something to be gained from that experience. That's a hard thing to teach our kids.
Absolutely. Taoism, if you read Taoism, there's actually great lessons to be learned from that. And I'm not taking away from Christianity.
No.
I'm just saying in terms of humility and quietness, and I think you can somehow also impact others more from being quiet and more from and you're taken more seriously too. Right. Interestingly, instead of you have all this knowledge that you can impart with to improve the situation at hand. Yeah. That in fact, there's some things, and I do this with my kids, that it's not important that I give them the right answer. They need to experience it for themselves, make a few mistakes, and as long as it doesn't hurt them or others,
right?
Sit back and allow it just to happen. And
one of the hardest things as a parent, right? To let our kids make mistakes.
And you know what? That's true of our theater, especially being community theater.
Yes.
That, there's some things that's not critical to the show.
Right.
That there's a better way, and you could tell the person. Right.
All experiences, but especially community theater, it needs to be an educational experience.
Absolutely.
And it would be nice if we have some process in place to ensure that? Yes, of course it would be. But part of it is we're all learning as we go, even 50s, 60s, whatever. Hopefully,
That's true.
We're continuing to learn, and as long as no one gets hurt,
exactly,
that's a good thing. Let's all learn together and have a good time.
Yeah, and for people who are thinking about maybe getting into theater, don't worry about whether or not you're good enough or whether or not you could be in front of a bunch of people. Think of it more as an experience. It's like, you're choosing to be in an environment where we have 2.5 months to take nothing and create something beautiful out of it.
Yes.
And enjoy that experience. And it's such a unique experience that I really recommend for anyone to at least give it a try, and we are in need, our theater.
We're always in need. That's right. We're not the only ones though. We think, I guess when you're busy with your organization, you'll think, I guess I'm the only one that we're short of singers. We're short of male, good male singers or dancers or whatever. We're not the only ones. Or we need people to help build set. You look around, every nonprofit is this way. Every nonprofit has to write their own articles and take their own pictures and, do their own PR and correct everything, develop their own talent and, continually bring in talent. I think, this, that's why we enjoy, talking, because as an entrepreneur, you probably more so than me, but as an entrepreneur, we're always having to continually build the organization. Just like we're doing the theater. We're having to continually build the organization.
Sure.
Develop talent, because people move on. So they graduate, they move on, and they need to do that. But again, chance to build, and sometimes that's kind of exciting. It's nerve-wracking sometimes, but building the organization, continually and giving people different opportunities to do things new.
Yeah.
That they enjoy.
And for retention purposes,
yes.
And people to come back, I think, again, doing, a more focused way of things outside of the theater, so that they feel like we're their family,
right?
Beyond what we need from them,
right?
But that, when you come to Stage Right and you become part, of our family, and we care for you and we know about you. It's true in business as well. If you really don't even ever take the time as a direct supervisor to know what the person may be going through and to empathize to some extent,
right?
Then they feel like, you're just trying to, milk them for all of the work kind of thing. They just feel like a tool.
They're done with you, move on.
Yeah.
You find that that's true more of just Western business, or I think that in other cultures, like European, South American cultures, they tend to get to know people better?
Well, yeah, it depends on the culture. I think we're on the bad side. I think Japanese are even worse. I mean,
really?
I went to Japan, and it's like a machine, and just take a look at the metro system on the way to work, on the way back to work. They almost look like machines.
Interesting. Yeah.
And they're. I get to go to Japan and visit small companies and talk with entrepreneurs and their employees, and their view was very different than what I thought it would be.
Really?
It's a little it'll take too long, I think, to explain.
Well, it's not, but I think there's something that we can learn as a society. Hopefully, we can't change society necessarily, but we can certainly change ourselves as individuals.
And organizationally, I think it's good because it will make people, even if they do want to move on to some other things, when you call them up and say, hey, we need help, we're falling behind, it's the kind of thing that they go, oh, I want to stop what I'm doing and I'm going to come over. Why? Because they feel like, we're their brother or we're their uncle or we're their... And I just think as an organization, it will set us apart, and it will help us with even organizational needs that we as a theater need. And I think, and I've been seeing this, that we're gradually growing. Our base is growing. Our
and comes that growing pains come with that as well.
Absolutely.
And you, like I said, you've seen it in every, like I said, that whole growth curve of the business, and organizations, have this growth and the growth spurts and the growth challenges and setbacks.
But I think you and Carolyn have done a fantastic job for this theater. I mean, I can see the contribution.
It's a labor of love, but when we talk about it, the most, and I appreciate that, like we said, I think the most rewarding part of the stories that we hear of how people have changed, and it sounds cliche and trite. But those stories make all the difference in the world of how people's lives have changed. It's amazing. And I know people get that to other organizations as well. But when you hear that, and I think one of the best stories was a theater teacher. She just moved to an assisted living center. She thought this was kind of the end of her life. This is where she was going to die, kind of depressed. Came to one of the shows and became so energized that now she writes her own plays. She's organized her own theater group at the assisted living center where she's at. They organize groups to come see our shows. Life has completely changed. So whenever I think about the little petty trials and tribulations that I go through it in business and life here, at stage right, that I hear that story and you realize that's nothing compared to what the potential you have to change someone's life.
The impact.
The impact is just incredible, and you didn't even realize it. Okay, I mean, I know people need to laugh. Yeah, we enjoy doing comedies. Yes, we know that people come to have a good time and go, but at the end of the day, those lives that are changed. I love those stories, and they're inspirational.
And a lot of those young actors, I don't think know that that's the impact that they
No, they don't.
have.
No.
I mean, they understand.
No, and that's okay. From where they are. To them, this is the experience, and hopefully they have a positive experience by working with a different cast crew. And this particular cast in Cinderella, it has gelled. They gelled way early.
Yes.
And as Kathleen says, maybe because they're all quirky, I don't know. Okay. Yeah. But they seem to have a good time.
And they've been very helpful.
And they've been very, very, very helpful. And you can't always say that of every cast. Not just here, but in any organization, right? Any theater company. But I hope they have a positive, but hopefully, will learn someday about the positive impact that they've had on folks.
Yeah. Well, maybe we can share that.
We can share that. That's
the
right.
Hours of,
that's right. We can tell. You'd be amazed. You weren't in the vaudeville show, right? No. But you did No Time for Sergeants.
The people who were in vaudeville are the ones who told us about your theater.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
The King family.
Yes,
that was very involved in that show. Husband, wife.
That's right. They were all in the vaudeville show. That's right.
And so that made me want to have my whole family nanny. So my wife was a nanny.
That's right.
and two of my children
right.
were involved in Annie. So
and you were in
yeah,
the whole family was in
exactly, and that's a wonderful experience. That again, if any family is listening to this, it's truly a bonding experience, not only between your family members, but then the whole dynamic that you as a family are interacting with all these other.
And it's interesting. I guess the society, we don't have many of those bonding moments anymore. A lot of them, Hopefully you get some at your church. So hopefully, I said you can do it in theater, but I seem to have less and less of those bonding moments. Even dinner, which is supposed to be a bonding moment. Sometimes there are not a lot of dinners we have together.
Exactly. We're on the go.
That's right. Yeah. Everyone's got something to do. Everybody's, a certain schedule. You get it.
Yeah, I agree with that. And, and if we can we can contribute to people's bonding experience, not only for their own family, but just, for them to get back in tune with themselves. Because I think theater kind of forces that.
Mm-hmm.
That you start to look at yourself a little more introspectively, how you relate,
right,
the good and the bad and the ugly,
Mm-hmm.
And it actually doesn't matter what role you have also in the theater.
No, it doesn't.
An actor or whatever. It's a wonderful experience. Well, I think we're fortunate. We're very fortunate to have the get up and go to do something about it.
Right.
Because that's what it takes to make this happen. I mean,
that's right.
Without people like yourself and Carolyn, that would be, I think, a void here.
Well, I said that's why the theater was for. There was a void, and we were hoping someone would fill it, and nobody came forward. Oh, what the heck! I could, like I said, you come to different crossroads in your life. I guess my particular one is, I've been bullied most of my life, and sometimes you just get to the point, well, I don't want to be bullied anymore. But then something happens, and you have to make a decision. Usually, okay, is this right or wrong? And the answer is usually, no, it's wrong. But the more interesting question is, are you going to do anything about it?
Right.
And for us, it was like, you know what? I guess we're going to have to do something about it. Even that means losing family, friends, money, or whatever. Some things are worth doing, and they're larger than ourselves. You just have to do it.
And that's actually a very Christian thought, by the way.
Yeah.
You do have to push yourself. Not enough people push themselves outside of their comfort zone, outside of what they think they can do.
Right.
And when I hear the history of stage right, it's very much that story. I think that's another teachable moment. I think just talking about how stage right came about and the issues it had to deal with at its inception.
Right.
Talk about David and Goliath and
right.
And really taking on much more than what most people I think would have given up or.
Well, most people, and they said, at any other time in my life, I probably would have just said, no, forget it. It's someone else's battle. Let them take it. And sometimes you just say, no, you have to make a stand sometime.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I guess this is where I make mine. But no, I said, God's been good because there've been these wonderful stories and relationships.
Yeah.
Like meeting new family and the other folks that have gotten involved. And it said, people will move on, but hopefully you have formed these bonds that last way beyond just the theater.
Right. And in fact, if we can help people then seed other things, I mean, imagine just like that lady at the home. But also, young people, give them the belief that they could start their own theater one day or whatever. I mean, we're then spreading this terrific good feeling. We're kind of like a factory, but our product is a bunch of happy people who, that we've turned their mood around and we've given them, hope or happiness or whatever. Mm-hmm. And for some of them that we've impacted, rather radically. So
yeah, that's right. The interesting thing was back to the vaudeville show was one of the dancers, and we needed a fan dancer, right? A family-friendly fan dancer, and we found one. And at the end of one of the cast parties, Lorraine, who was the fan dancer, gave us a gift card. Well, wait a minute. We should be giving you the gift card. We're thank you. And she goes, no. And she told us the story of how she used to be a Dallas cheerleader, and but she always wanted to be able to dance on stage and have her daughter see it. And she didn't get to do it until vaudeville.
Wow.
So that was our gift to daughter was allowed to see her on stage. And so it really touched us. But it's like, no, we owe you. You did a favor for us. And no, you did a favor for me, and this is how it is. To date, she's still the person who's gone the furthest for rehearsals because she lived in Dallas during the time. So she would fly. Well, she was a stewardess, so she would fly down for rehearsals.
Wow,
that's dedication.
Yeah, gosh, talk about a long day.
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't every day. She said, I can make it from, say Wednesdays to Saturdays or whatever, and then she'd fly down for that period of time, and we'll do rehearsals then, and then we'll go back. She lives in the cover area now, but yeah, that's dedication. It's amazing what people will do for the, for the theater.
Yeah, that's true. Mm-hmm. It's also beautiful how, no matter what happens, it just seems to always come together at the end.
Yeah.
Only football can I think of it. Does that kind of happen,
That's right. Yeah.
I was fortunate when I lived in D.C. and I had that company. I had a lot of friends, and Rick Doc Walker, which was he was one of the original hogs for the Washington Redskins. We were very good friends, and in fact, business partners. And so he was very connected with the NFL still, and still is probably. And so I got to meet some of the NFL coaches and have lunches with them. And and when you get to break down the barriers and you're just talking about regular people with families and kids
life,
and
whatever,
yes. It's very similar. They were telling me stories very similar to directors of, right up to, the week before, the first official play, or game of the season.
Right.
They're still freaking out that things aren't coming together, the plays are still not right, that they're not sure that the mix of the people were correct, and it's just, and then it just kind of all just happens. And
isn't that interesting? That is the human story. Different elements, different times, different industries. The story's the same.
Yeah.
That's great. That's a great story. We need to record those stories. We need to get those stories up because they're inspirational. Yeah. That's amazing. In football, same story. Yeah, I don't know if it's going to come together.
Yeah, well, think about it. It's amazing to put together a team that goes on to the Super Bowl in the amount of time that they have.
Right.
Because I think they only have 2-3 months before the first game. So you're, not sure you have a lot of returning players.
Yes.
So you have your known entities. But a lot of times it's, because everybody's adjusting all their plays and everything to whatever you did previously in your season.
Right.
So then you got to retool.
But that's at the macro level. But even at the micro level, there's the players that have been around, the new players, there's that interaction or interfacing. The same thing in theater, right?
Yeah.
You've got people that have been doing this for some time. Yeah. You've got people that are complete newbies, right?
Exactly.
And they all have to come together somehow as family.
That's right.
To work together. No, it is a fascinating. There's one of the guys we had interviewed, Dennis O'Connor, and he said, he was another child of the 70s. And he said he spent a lot of that time just observing people. And that's what he uses in part of his characterization, is all this observation that he's done of people.
Absolutely.
How do they act? How do they react? What is it? What are their likes, dislikes? The emotional elements. Their physical gestures, which of course he likes to adapt it to characters, right?
Very important.
Absolutely very important. I think that's, when I was in New Orleans, it was the first time I'd been away from home for a while. And I would go to the library, outside the library, and just watch life go by. It was just, it was an exercise in human observation. And a lot of it is ordinary stuff, families coming to the library, whatever, people's conversations, and you're just the fly on the wall, Yeah, this is interesting. I'll note that. I do think that we need to get back to kind of learning of stillness as a strength, not a weakness.
As a strength, I agree. Yeah, my experience in observing was my father was a U.S. diplomat, and he lived overseas. And I didn't know till he ended his career at the State Department after 33 years, but he was also CIA. And so now it makes sense that we used to have parties at our house 4 nights a week. And
4 nights a week?
And we used to have a room filled with alcohol that were brought over on Navy ships for the purpose, in other words, and I also didn't know that my father would take a pill that was chemically designed for you to tolerate alcohol. So he would almost make it like a manly thing that, keep up with me with the Russian ambassador.
But it didn't have an impact.
And his impact, well, maybe the Russians were doing the same thing. And they're playing games with each other. But there was an enormous amount of drinking, and that's how they extracted information, absolutely. But for me as a child, these would be very large parties. I mean, they equip usually the ambassador or the consul general or the consular with big lavish homes, and so we would have anywhere from 70 to 150 people at
4 nights a week.
4 nights a week, and so as a child, my parents were too busy doing things. Even my mother had, I guess, things that my father said. "Oh, make sure you speak to this."
Right.
And, remember conversations or whatever. So she was as busy as him. And so nobody was paying attention to me. So I would go around and just listen. I would just
you're part of the party
sit on a couch.
You're part of the party
well, technically they put me to bed, but they were so busy that I could get out of bed.
They didn't even notice.
And come back down.
And you were probably small.
This started from, 3 years old on.
Right.
Now, sometimes they found me, there's a story that they told me, that they found me rolling on the floor, giggling, at about 3 years old, because I had come down and I was just finishing everybody's drink.
But you didn't have the pill.
I don't know. That was, they didn't find me till the next morning. It's not like at night they went, "Oh, this poor child, put me back to bed." No, they found me in the morning, rolling and giggling and still completely drunk. But anyway, but I got to see a lot of conversations and hear things at a young age. I mean, I remember, 6 or 7 years old, hearing women talk about, how they hate their husbands and they want to have an affair with this and that. I mean, things that you would just shouldn't be exposed to.
Right.
But when you're, and I was always very silent because I had learned I make myself known. Then they would say, "Who's that kid?" And then I'd go up to bed.
Right.
So I was just very quiet, the fly on the wall, and I would go. When I got bored with a conversation, I'd go walk to another.
Sure.
And it's fascinating the things that I heard, and and that's, I think, where cataloged in the brain, you see a lot of mannerisms. You see a lot of how some people talked, and it did impact me because then a teenager and in college, I was more comfortable with much older people. Because
you'd been around them your whole life.
Exactly.
Yes.
And to be with kids my own age, I
that was the odd part.
Problem.
That was the odd part. Yes.
Yeah, it was very odd for me. So I was kind of a self outcast because I just didn't want to be part of a lot of those groups.
So what do you do for fun now? Other than theater, I mean, yes, I know you're trying to, continue to do theater stuff. But what do you do for fun?
Well, I'm actually getting back into music. I've 2 former band members moved to Austin, so I go to Austin a lot and we play. I am reading and writing as well. I've actually, it's weird that I forgot to tell you this. I wrote some Christian plays for Vacation Bible School.
Right.
And these are 30-minute, 5 different shows, and it would be like a sitcom. So the theme might be Gilligan's Island.
Right.
So I wrote 5 30-minute Christian scripts, and that's a lot of writing. That's 2.5 hours.
Yeah, right.
I mean, that would be like a long movie. Right. And each day you would have whatever the lesson is, but it would have to come out through the adventures, and then because Fellowship of Woodlands has a fairly large, budget, the things that we were able to do were quite amazing. I mean, we had a professional pyrotechnic person who's actually licensed by the state for explosions, and where he could create an explosion this close to me, and it would be completely safe. So that I could, be, one time I created a script where I was a mad scientist.
Right.
And the mad scientist is this, guy who's fumbling and can't remember people's names. And, but the comedy was very slapstick. And, I would create explosions, and then I would fall on the ground, switch wigs to the burnt out wig, talcum powder in it. And then when the smoke kind of dissipates, I kind of get up, and I tap my hair, and
you got all the smoke coming out.
It's coming out. And others where we would have the fire department be up on the top of the stage, And then there would be a woman who actually was wearing a harness, but she has a dress that was built. Yes. So you just, she just looked like she's sitting there, and she's part of the, she comes out on that side of the stage, and she delivers her line. And essentially what I do is, and she's a shorter, thinner, lighter woman than I am, I hand her like 50 balloons that were all helium balloons. Right. And she grabs the balloons, and then the firemen start pulling. Oh my goodness! And it's very slow, so the people that are seeing it, in front, are thinking it's real. It's like the balloons are lifting her up, and we did that many balloons because we wanted to hide. The wire, because they would start looking for what's lifting them up. Well, all they could see was the balloons. Oh, that's funny. And but I had already turned, so I didn't know that she's. I mean, my character didn't know that she's floating up. So I'm talking to her, and then I turn around, and I'm thinking she's gone, but she's actually above me. Yeah, that was all part of the comedy that we were able to do. Wow. So I was able to benefit from big budgets, huge stage, and the ability to bring in different people, so that therefore the scripts that I did were fairly elaborate as a result. So that occupied a lot of my time. It took 5 months to write 2.5 hours worth of scripts.
Oh no, people underestimate the time of the writing, the whole development process.
Yeah, and then I directed it, and then I acted in it.
Oh my goodness!
So it was
written by, directed by, produced by, acted by.
Well, but it was the time. I could devote the time. Yes. In church, it's all volunteer as well.
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
Who else could put that kind of time? So that's stepping in when it's needed, right?
Absolutely.
So I would like to. I think long term, I would like to write a play and have it good enough that without even asking, that people would go, this is a good enough play to.
It's funny that you mentioned that, because we get submitted a lot of plays, just out of the blue, and we try to be kind, of course, but they are so Jewish, and that's the way I could best put it. But let me take that. I don't want to make it sound like that's maybe affluence is the wrong word. There are a lot of mistakes, I guess, that first-time writers make. Right. So that maybe there's too much exposition. Maybe their characters are kind of one-dimensional. You know what I'm talking about, right?
I do.
So that when you read it, maybe they was just wonderful to them, and we're like, I don't know how we're ever going to put this off from many aspects. And then wondering how do you stage this thing. The storyline, I'm not buying it. And I think that's really the key thing. We've talked. There was a director we had here who said she was really into simple stories told well. And I don't know if necessarily it's a simple story, but I think the told well part is important.
Absolutely.
So
because they're all basically thematically similar.
Yeah, they're all thematically similar. But whatever that is, it's too hokey, too simple, too one-sided, whatever. Right. Yeah. So when you write, how do you make your characters real?
Well, it depends what you're writing, obviously. So I've written recently, past several years, comedies.
Yes.
So in the comedy, is to make things funny without trying to
be funny. Yes.
So it's allowing the action, allowing the circumstances to be where most of the jokes are, so that the characters can just be, again, for lack of a better term, pathetic in their little circumstance, but you either empathize their patheticness, or you just laugh at them because they're ridiculous people. But so in comedy, I think it has to be subtle as opposed to obvious, as opposed to
I'm not trying to write a funny line or a funny scene, but the circumstance is funny because for whatever reason we relate to it.
So So I view comedy as almost like the storyline would be a similar storyline to anything else, but there's a bunch of things that happen that make it funny. Right. And but the story is so important. It has to make sense. It has to make sense why there's a character. Right. It has to make sense. Why are you in this room? Why is this room important? What occurs? there's still, even though it's a comedy, needs to have the dynamic interactions with the different people.
Yeah.
If you're going to have an uncle, and why is the uncle there, and how does he add to the tension that causes the funny moments? So I seem to have a natural understanding of comedies, which comedies are hard to do, I'd say.
Yeah, people think that's easy. No,
it's actually quite difficult.
Not difficult. Do you get your sense? Obviously you've had all these wonderful experiences or observations over your lifetime. You pull on those to kind of get that sense of comedy?
Absolutely. Because to me, so many things that adults did and do are funny to me.
Right.
And I think we can laugh at ourselves because it all has to relate, obviously, to the audience. Because what I think is funny could potentially not be funny to anybody else.
Right.
So it has to be all circumstances also that people can actually relate to, and in a way laugh at themselves.
Yes.
Like, yeah, I mean, it's ridiculous, but yes, I do that too. Because then they can feel. Like not only is it real, this is not just just to be funny with lines, but a situation that they may have found themselves into, and they're so to me, comedy a lot of the times is that mirror in front of yourself that makes you not take yourself too seriously, and a lot of what I've written has been about get off your high horse, because if you realize just how funny we really are, and I think that's the seeds of a successful comedy. The more serious work that I've written, not screenplays, but more the whole process of writing.
Was that for you, or is it just like writing is therapeutic, or writing?
Well,
for
it is therapeutic for me personally, but. Ultimately, that's what I want to end up doing in my latter years, which I guess now is not that many anymore.
Now.
But in the perfect world, the last 10, 15 years of my life, I'd love to be in a more, out in the country or some place where nature is a big part of my life, meditation and such, and that I can focus on a craft that really absorbs me. And I'm talking about much older, where getting out of bed is somewhat painful, but I can still go to the study and write, because I have still in me so many experiences that I can draw on that I've not yet, and in multiple genres that I can tie that in.
Right.
Some of the geopolitical stuff that I experienced as a kid, my filtering, because we all filter things differently at different ages. My filtering of some of those events that I've lived through would make for interesting stories, whether I adapt them to the stage or to fiction.
Well, let's talk about that, because I remember we were having a conversation, and this is part of why we have this kind of film project, is that stage is certainly different from film, but certainly it doesn't have to be. It can certainly be accessible. And you were talking about a friend that. They develop their own scripts or purchase scripts and then develop movies, but for export, not for the U.S. market necessarily.
I've been involved in a sitcom that's actually on TBS that plays today, called The Wannabes. So I helped fund them initially, and they're now off and going, and they're into their third season. But now I'm involved with a movie production company, and the woman has a husband who's world renowned. So he actually goes on to film sites all around the world for major projects, and has a name for himself. And then now she's making a name for herself, and she's teamed up with another woman to create their own film company. And what they do, they have a development fund, and they will acquire the rights to a story. And these are written by indie type writers, so people that actually have a name in the the almost not-for-profit, I should say, circuit.
Right.
But but they actually have interesting storylines, and she will develop a film very quickly because they do it smart. They do it usually on location, so you don't have to build so much, and they usually film an entire movie in about 3 weeks.
Wow.
They spend 300,000, let's say. Mm-hmm. And the purpose of that movie then is to export it to the Chinese, Indian, Arabic countries, and so the distributors are the ones who actually then translate the film, and they're paid to do that. But then they, of course, they distribute and they provide the company with money. And in that way of doing it, by the way, it actually takes about 5 years to fully milk it through the initial distribution around the world. So they're making money solid for 5 years. And then, after about 5 years, they put it into a library of films. And then they sell the rights to the library of films, which could be 10, 12, 20 films. Mm-hmm. Now, they either sell it or they do it themselves, but that goes now into syndication, where it starts to get put onto television and or second, third rounds of smaller theaters, and they make another bunch of money. So that initial $300,000 production could end up netting 10x to 20x of its original investment value. So even in terms of just pure money as an investor, it's a great model, one that I'm very interested in. And I think by helping them, they would actually hire me eventually. And I don't think they care where I live. I would have to go to Austin though very frequently. They would hire me to kind of manage the development fund and manage the more business-oriented parts of their business. And then, I would learn a whole new part of our business. Mm-hmm. But to me, it's, again, very similar to what we're doing now.
I'm sure you're going to meet a lot of people. I've just finished reading. I had reread it again. I hadn't remembered it was The Making of Star Trek. But what it's really about is the whole production process. And so all these things that you think are unique to nonprofit theaters, no, we're over budget, we're behind schedule, and the poor set designer, you've cut my budget for the 4th time, so I'm working with a 1/4 of the money, and I still have to do all this, all these concerns, the whole production process. It's not really any different. You say, okay, well, I've got professionals doing this and that. No, you know what?
Not that first one.
No, there's more personalities, more to deal with, it's just amazing. And I'd forgotten those stories, and now having to reread it, I'm remembering, yes, I'm beginning to remember this production process. This is not unique to us. It's, it's like that.
That's very, very, very true. I met a man when I lived in D.C. who was the guy who invented the technique of the tunneling, the space tunneling.
That's used a lot now, right?
Which is used a lot, but it was revolutionary for Star Trek. Not Star Trek, the first Star Wars.
Yes.
So in his house, he had the initial prototype still.
Yes.
That's what he went to pitch.
Wow.
The director with, and they said, yes, can you now do it in, this format? He said, yes. And now he was a mathematician. That was his background.
Wow.
So it was all,
that's right.
Graphics. It was just math.
It's all math.
Because back then, they didn't have the graphics capability that they do today.
Yeah.
So it was truly an optical illusion done with cameras, and the way it was.
It's not going to be done digitally, right? But it's still math. But it's still math. It's all that math. The engine is all behind it.
So he was the guy, and that one thing he did was able to get him started on a great career. And what I liked about him, one thing he taught me had nothing to do with that, was his goals. What he would do is he would have 1-year projects and 5-year projects, and he would put pictures that he would cut from magazines or whatever onto this big sheet. So if it's his 1-year goals, there would be all these pictures, and every morning it was a visual experience. He'd wake up and he'd look at the pictures, and it would remind him why he's getting up out of bed today and what he's going to do.
How about that? But he did it on a daily basis.
Oh yeah. Well, it was in his living room. It was just, because I asked him, I said,
What is this?
Yeah, what is this? Because he didn't try to make it look pretty. It wasn't some artistic.
It was for him.
Thing. It was just a bunch of pictures,
right? And
they all meant something to him. They were all motivating for him, so that he would go the extra mile and spend that 16-hour day if he had to get his goals done for that year.
So. That's interesting. I'd forgotten this. I probably need to start again. I used to do this annual review, but it was for me, and it was really just a quiet time to kind of look at your life over the past year. Things that went well, maybe things that didn't go so well, where you were headed, what you wanted, to do, and move on. Again, but it was this quiet moment you would spend, kind of looking where you'd been and where you wanted to go. But it was not as frequent as this Victor every day. Okay, I'm looking at this. Okay, this is why I do what I do. Let's and move on.
I met in Austin just a few weeks ago a guy who's in his early 50s. He's a business guy, and you would think, looking at him, because he's in sales too, so he's like a slick Willie.
Right.
But he, in fact, had incredible depth, and he shared with me in the first meeting. Now it turned into we were supposed to be a 30-minute meeting, turned into 2 hours or 3 hours. But he took out this wheel, and this wheel had little circles all around the center core. The center core was him.
Right.
But one of the circles was his being as a husband, as a father, his hobbies, his work. His work was only one little circle.
Right.
And he had writings in it, which is what he ultimately, where he wanted to be. Mm-hmm. And he used that daily, he said, to see where he was out of balance. So he would look at it in the morning as what I want, and then in the evening, now how did I actually do? Did I spend too much time here and not enough there? And he uses it as a guide so that overall his life can be balanced, because he says otherwise you allow things to slip, like health.
Yes.
I mean, for me, gosh, that's like health.
No.
But,
no, I understand. That's an important thing that we forget is that balance is very important. And we need a way to remind ourselves how to get rebalanced. Mm-hmm. He just did it, but he said you did it on a daily basis.
He did it on a daily basis,
wow.
and so I thought, gosh, well, first of all, I love here's a business meeting.
Yes. That
was supposed to be cut dry, 30 minutes, out the door, see you later, never see him again in my life, to, here's now a guy with a tremendous amount of depth that I've kept in touch with and hope to work with him, in the future. So.
That's interesting. Yeah. I hadn't realized, I guess I have been doing it, but I hadn't realized that. I think that's a great technique, something that the takeaway. I use travel as a way to rebalance. And again, it could be business travel, it could be vacation travel, and sometimes family, why do we want to go anywhere? I just want to stay here. No, I want to leave here. I don't want to stay here. Right. I want to go somewhere. But it is a chance to rebalance. And the rebalancing part is usually a taxi ride with some unknown driver. And try to, or restaurateur that you get to know, and try to strike up a conversation. Again, it's just trying to understand their point of view, how do they view American politics? Because they always have a view, right?
Sure.
But even just life in general, what things concern them, what things cost. I love going into a supermarket to see how much eggs cost, or whatever.
Right. Well, that's an observation. Yes,
that's right. It's like
observing.
And it's fascinating because it helps to reset who you are. And it's like, okay, I can understand that. It's not necessarily about agreement or disagreement or that. It's just trying to understand that from perspective.
Yeah.
So you go back to your life, wherever that may be, doing whatever you're doing, and you see it from a different perspective. You do that. I used to travel a lot too.
Yeah, absolutely. But we're obviously out of balance in the sense of family and of being a husband and all these other things when we're traveling. But yeah, that's a great time to immerse yourself in that different environment, and it does rebalance how you look at life.
Yes,
because if we're too much, if all we see is what we see every day, then we become one-dimensional.
Mm-hmm.
But you recently went to Perth.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I said we went to this. Somebody said you need to go to the cemetery. Why? I said because people bring flowers to the cemetery, and the kangaroos come to eat the flowers, and then people go to see the kangaroos eating the flowers that the people brought to the cemetery. One of the most beautiful places I've ever seen. It's no headstones.
Is it above ground or?
No, it's all above ground. It just looks like a park. It looked like a park to me. A little plaques, but they're embedded, almost as edging in the park. A lot of water features and trees. A beautiful place.
No stones.
No headstones. Yeah. No headstones. No big structures that we would think of. No, they're very understated, quiet, peaceful.
Not like New Orleans.
No.
Or you can't walk if everything's above ground.
No, it's fascinating. But you're right. It's back to balance. He said that's a nice thing. The balance with family, balance with your work, balance all different elements of your life.
Yeah.
Well, you've had a chance to have a lot of interactions. I guess we would. I guess people would externally think of successful folks. No. So, what's your takeaway from these different folks that you see? I mean, you have a chance to look at different lifestyles, different mind process thoughts.
It's nice to see people who succeed, make a lot of money, and then realize that the money is worthless if you can't do something with it. So there's a wonderful Christian man that I'm friends with in the Woodlands who, sold his company for, several $100 million, many, many hundreds of millions.
Yes.
And you would think, okay, he's done and he's just going to live a lavish life for the rest of his life. But no, he truly is now giving it away, much like Bill Gates is. I mean, he gives to many, many organizations around the world, but he personally will go to Africa with his own groups, and they will drill water wells in villages where it doesn't take that much money. It actually, for $50,000, I believe, no matter how deep, they can get a water well with all the systems to pull the water out. And what that saves is women to have to carry these enormous water jugs for sometimes 5 to 15 miles. So we're talking about a major part of their day, half the day, just to bring water to their families so that they can subsist. That doesn't include the cleaning, the cooking, and everything else that they do.
Just as water.
So there's a tremendous, it revitalizes an entire little town. And so that's one of his projects as an example, that he'll spend 3 weeks in Africa, but they'll do an average of 2 wells a day. That's a lot of wells, and that's an enormous amount of people that he's impacting. Now, while he's there, he's also, giving out Bibles and just seeding. He's seeding people. Yes. Now, these are all things that he doesn't have to do. He doesn't have to do any of that.
No.
But he's.
It sounds like it's part of his core being. It's in his heart.
Oh, yeah. Just a wonderful person. He's very soft-spoken, very non-judgmental. You could really talk to him about anything. He may not agree with what he's saying, but he'd never let you know that he's just a wonderful role model. But for every person like that I meet, I also know some billionaires in Dallas, as an example, where it's not the case at all. Where they'll spend $79,000 to decorate their home for Christmas. Who'll spend millions of dollars in cars, and and that's sad for me, because then I'll ask, well, what do you do, for others? And it's a much smaller, much less with a lot.
That's a shame.
So, but I'm interested in the two extremes. I like younger people, when they're naive and they're, the world's still their they believe they can just go after the world in a naive sense and contribute. So I enjoy those conversations, and I enjoy the people who've retired and they've not given up on life. A lot of people that retire, it's like, okay, it's over. Let me wait till death comes and takes me. But people are like, okay, they're trying to now truly understand themselves and almost for the first time going, now what is my purpose on earth?
I think that's important. That especially as we get into our older years, that we still have a purpose in life, a reason to get up in the morning.
Absolutely.
People ask me, where do you want to go when you retire? And I say it's not where, it's what am I doing and who am I doing it with. That's more important to me in retirement. The where. I don't care. I mean, no, we have to say, because especially as guys, right?
Oh, yeah.
I want to live by the sea. Well, that will last all of about 5 seconds. You know, right? It's a beautiful view. Okay, what are we doing?
Yeah.
You know, it's just not that important to me. It's more important that you have a reason to get up in the day. You're doing something, and something meaningful. Not just selfish necessarily, but you know, something that's meaningful, and that you're doing it with other people that you enjoy being with. So, you know, to me, that's, and hopefully retirement is pleasant in that sense.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But the way things are going, I'm not sure there's going to be retirement that way. Hopefully we can just enjoy whatever we're doing, and we can still do some work, and that maybe goes on for who knows how long.
Yeah. But if you can somehow make money doing something that you enjoy.
Exactly. That's the best thing.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's a labor of love.
Exactly. And that's kind of what I'm trying to forge right now as well, is doing more consulting work.
Right.
And if I could actually make a living doing that, it would allow me to completely control my hours and do then many things, including theater all the time.
That you enjoy doing.
Because I haven't auditioned in
No, you haven't. Since No Time? Is it No Time, the last show, right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I was injured there.
Yeah.
On that show.
Yeah, but still.
So for 6 months, I
right.
couldn't hardly walk. But,
right.
But yeah, I'm hoping that the consulting work that I'm doing now can sustain me.
Yeah.
And I think if my wife can do her part, then we're all good.
That's what she wants to do too, right? So we got the little. All right. The big question, yes. If heaven exists, what do you want God to say when you get to the pearly gates?
Well, he does exist, in my opinion.
Yes.
I think that he's just loving and forgiving. So that I think if you can live your life with no regrets by asking forgiveness when you do wrong and just really caring for people, because to me it all boils down to love. You have to have love in order to love others and to empathize and others to help. So I think if your heart was filled with love, then God will be at pearly gates. Go, hey, we give you a hug.
We give you a hug. Hey, we need you. Come over here. I need help with set over here. I need a bass. We're short of bass. Could you get it?
Yeah.
Hey, you played FDR before, right? Yeah, we need an FDR for Annie. Phil, thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
We'll do this again. So bye.
Great. Appreciate it.